this week's episode of Be More Super. This is a first time for us because we've never had a stand-up comic. I know it's going to be a good interview because in previous interviews he's mentioned he's a fan of Christopher Reeve and Superman, which is my massive go-to film. Let's introduce him. Is Mr. Patrick Hakeem. Patrick, welcome to the show, sir.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Brian.
Do you know what? It's an absolute pleasure, and I you know what? I look forward to hearing the pitfalls and the ups of being a stand-up comic, because it's probably got to be one of the hardest jobs to do, the most challenging, the ones that probably got plenty of ups and downs. So what inspired you? Because I know that you've worked in a call center. I know that you've worked all over the place. I've done my research.
Oh, man.
But what inspired you to actually take that leap from, I know, normal jobs to actually pursuing a career as a stand-up comic?
I've always wanted to be a stand-up comedian. I think the first time I ever saw stand-up comedy, I was drawn to it, and it's in the '80s. It was Eddie Murphy's Delirious,
Mm.
and I had thought that this was the funniest thing I had seen, and I wanted to do that. But I came from immigrant parents. My mom was super against it. Like, she wanted me to be a doctor or an accountant. And I was terrible at high school. Like, I was that kid that was eating the glue in grade one, like I was not like I was not, scholastics were not for me. But I ended up really messing around a lot. I grew up in Montreal, which is like a playground for like nightclubs and partying, and I worked in call centers, and I was just always afraid to try to do it. And I started doing it in my early 30s. So the first time I ever did a set was 31. And once I started doing stand-up comedy, uh, all the best things in my life started to happen after that.
I mean, how challenging was it to actually start? Because I can't imagine that you just, I mean, I don't know. Did you just turn up at a comedy club and it was an open mic night? I mean, how did you
So
actually start?
I had a lot of jobs, like, from all the way, and this was at the end, and I ended up becoming a script writer for a company called Brazzers.com.
I saw that.
Uh,
That's
yeah,
amazing.
it's not as amazing as you think it is. And I had an actor friend. She's somebody I grew up with, named Christina Rosato. She's successful in her own right. And she asked me to take an acting class that she was taking just because she knew I always wanted to be an actor or a stand-up. And I met a guy who's really famous here in Canada. He's also famous in France. He does You Have Talent in France. His name is Sugar Sammy. And
Mm.
we became quick friends. And he pushed me to do stand-up comedy. He told me, you're a very likable guy and the jokes will come and go. You should try this. And he insisted. It took me a year of him encouraging me. And the first time I did an open mic was a competition to win a weekend spot at this club in Montreal called the Comedy Works. And I ended up doing my first 5 minutes, and I ended up winning the spot for the weekend in that competition.
Wow. Wow. And I've got to say, just quickly, Christina Rosato, she's actually been on this show. I've actually interviewed her.
Oh,
Um,
that's amazing. She was one of my groomsmen for my
was
wedding.
she?
Yeah.
I'm trying to get her other half on the show, really desperately, because I'm a massive Bitten fan. But yeah, I mean that must have been so daunting to enter a competition and actually win. I mean, but I mean, what got you to that stage? Because it's. I mean, did someone just tell you, you know what, you're really funny, or was it a case of you just wanted to do something completely different, and you thought, let's do something completely different?
I think, like, it, I was I had avoided doing the things I wanted to do my whole life to that
Mm.
point. I wanted to do stand up, but I was always doing the wrong things. I was either partying too much, I was going out with my friends too much. I was in the wrong jobs, where it came from call center to working at this job at Brazzers, and I was too invested in my social life.
Mm.
And I was, the truth is, I was afraid to try because I had wanted it to to do it so badly that it was frightening. And then I became depressed because I was neglecting the things that I wanted to do. So I
Mm.
went like from my late 20s till that point, I was unhappy for a really long time. And once I got on stage, the minute I got on stage and got that first laugh, I realized that I should have been doing that since my early 20s, even my late teens. And then once I ripped the bandage off, I couldn't stop. I was now addicted to being on stage and getting better at my craft.
That is awesome. I mean, it's just nice, isn't it, when you find your calling and you know you just instantly recognize that that's the thing that you need to be doing for the rest of your life. So when you decided that that was a career and this is a career for you, did you have a plan in place in what you wanted to achieve? You know, in the way of where you wanted to perform or things like SNL and stuff like that.
So for me, it's like I wanted to get good at stand up. And the idea of trying to get better is what I became obsessed with. Everything else was trivial. And, this was like 2010. And Montreal is a city, for those of you that listen that don't know, is it's half French and half English. And the English side, they do host the biggest comedy festival in the world just for laughs. But outside of that, stand up comedy, the stage time, you can't, the place to go in Canada is Toronto because there's open mics at bars. You can do 5 shows a night. They're not all good, but you can get the repetition in. And back then in Montreal at the time is like if you were up and coming and you were like people were excited about you, if you got on stage 2 or 3 times a week, you were killing it. And that quickly I was unsatisfied with that stage time because I needed to get better at a faster rate. And I ended up meeting a comedian named Dave Merhaj, who is now currently he's co-starring in a movie with Daisy Ridley called Sometimes I Think of Dying. And he was also on a show called Rami that's like critically acclaimed. And I met him. He came for the Just for Laughs festival, and we hit it off. And he told me that in Toronto there's more stage time, and that if I wanted to take my career and get better at my craft, that I should move to Toronto. And once I had that conversation with him, I knew that my time in Montreal was coming to an end because I needed to get better at my craft, and I needed to move and push myself to get better in stand up. And that's what I ended up doing.
I mean, we're seeing more and more comedians do like big arena gigs or Netflix specials. Do you feel that if you did like an arena gig, or a Netflix special, that would change you as a performer in what you deliver?
No, I've been doing stand up for 14 years now, and I've developed my own voice and style. And I've come to a point where it's like, if you like what I do, awesome. And if you don't, not. And if there's an arena full of people that like what I do, then let's go. And if I'm trying to please you, then I'm not going to try to please you. I'm going to do what is true to me and what I've created in the last 14 years. And I don't think it would change me
I
as a
mean,
performer.
these arena gigs. I mean, in the UK, we've got comedians like Peter Kay and Lee Evans and Jimmy Carr, and
Right.
they do these big arena gigs. And I always think that stand up comedy is very intimate. It's sort of you've got to be sort of seeing the expressions on the audience's face because that's what
Right.
you potentially would be playing off and getting reactions. So I can only imagine it must be quite difficult to. It's a different
So
type of comedy, I suppose.
I wouldn't know. Like I had a buddy of mine earlier this year, and he opened up for. Do you know the comedian Andrew Schultz?
No.
He's an American comic, but he did like a show in Canada that fills like 30,000 seats, which is like an arena show. and he opened for him, and he told me, it's like, it's just like it's like doing comedy in a well. Like, you're just saying things and you'll hear laughter sprinkled out. Not everybody's paying attention. People are still trying to get to their seats, and they're all waiting for that headliner. And I can only imagine, like, if you're big enough to fill an arena and everybody's there to see you, it's amazing. I've seen arena shows myself as an audience member, and I was too far that I didn't even laugh because of how far I was from the comedian.
Yeah.
And it's like one of those things, like, it's like sometimes when you watch something, a video, it's funny, but you don't laugh. You're just at your computer just going, that's good. And that's how I felt watching it from the seat that I had when I saw Kevin Hart.
Yeah. I mean, Kevin Hart, again, I think he's very. The thing is, with comedy, it's very personal, isn't it? I mean, there are some comedians out there that I'll watch and I won't laugh at all, and then there's some that I'm wetting myself, and I won't name the ones that I don't find funny at all. But
Very classy of you.
yeah, yeah. Well, and but yeah. The next question I was going to ask was, how do you develop, a show? How do you develop? Where do you start? What is your structure? I mean, obviously,
So,
don't give it all away, because there'll be people
well, my
watching thinking,
structure
right,
is
I could
like,
be one.
so for me, it's like, it's about like experiences that are personal to me. I'm more of like a storyteller. So the story is tailored, something funny that happened to me or about how I feel about a certain subject. I'm not a person to write for a subject. Like, I won't be like, Trump, he has to pay that bond in 2 months. Let me write a joke about this. 'Cause I really like it. I have to feel it in my gut. So it
Mm,
mostly comes. It's all about my personal experience, my upbringing, being married to my wife, things like that. And my process is, basically, I have an idea, and I'm like a stage rat. I like to go on stage and take this idea and flesh it out in front of as many mics and as many audiences, different audiences, as possible. Because you don't want to perform for the same type of audience all the time, because what works here might not work over there. So,
mm.
like, if there's a certain audience that lean more to the right and it works there, then maybe the next show you want to try those same jokes to an audience that leans more to the left and see how that works out. And once both sides are laughing, you're like, oh, I really have a good bit that's undeniable.
Mm. I mean, do you sort of do like a test sort of gig where you're testing the stuff and seeing what's working and what's not, and then obviously marking down, the best bits, and then put them all together? Because I know that a lot of comedians do that. Say at the Fringe in Scotland, in Edinburgh, they do that there. So before going on tour, they can sort of flush out the bits that may not work as well.
So I'm blessed to work at a lot of comedy clubs within Toronto. And I'm at a spot where I can just try new things at a weekend gig, and it doesn't really matter. It won't affect my bookings in the future. So based on that, based on how those work out and how those flesh out over the upcoming weeks, then I'll know that it's good enough to put in a headlining set that I would do when I headline a club out of town or across the country.
Mm. I
Yeah.
mean, when you were starting out, I mean, have you got any like sort of, stories that you can share that was quite funny, that happened to you, when you were trying to make it? Because I'm sure you met so many
Absolutely.
sorts of people and experienced so many sort of situations.
So, oh, sorry about
Oh,
that.
sorry.
I so when I first moved here, there's a festival here. And it was a music and comedy festival called North by Northeast, and we did this show at this club called the Bovine Sex Club, and it's just a bar. It's like a punk bar, and they have this rooftop terrace that you can just. And it was like an outdoor show, and it was filled. It was a standing room only, and I was opening up for some of the best comics in the country here. And I remember feeling this immense pressure. And when you're the opening act, you're setting the tone after the
Mm.
host. So I get on stage, and there's this drunk table, and they will not shut up. And I'm kind of like, I have to take control here. So I asked them to stop talking. I go, what's going on? They're so drunk that they don't even realize that I'm talking to them from the stage. So I finally get their attention, and I ask them, I go, guys, look how many people are behind you. Like any of them would kill to be sitting in your seats. If you can shut up, everybody here is paid to come see comedy, and people are like applauding. And this guy throws me an empty pint glass, and I end up catching it. And I pretend to throw it back at him, and he kind of ducks. And I'm like, okay, I'm joking. And I go, don't throw stuff at people. And I continue with my jokes. They still start talking. Finally, I tell them to shut up. And I get like this applause break for telling them to shut up. And then I turn around to continue jokes. And the guy throws a shot glass that hits me right here, square in the middle of the face. And it was one of the most humiliating things that I've ever experienced. Like first, like it's like blood started gushing from my face, and I just remember being so humiliated that I whipped the mic on the ground, jumped off the stage, and I started wailing on this guy, just beating the crap out of him. And which felt like forever. And I guess the guy didn't think that I had that in me. And they ended up pulling me apart. They kicked out the guy, and I'm in the washroom. And the host, Keith Page, was a very funny guy. And I just hear him. He goes, and the show was called The Rooftop Ruckus. And
Yeah.
he's like, oh, he goes, that's why we call this show The Rooftop Ruckus, everybody. And it gets like this huge applause break. I'm in a washroom that has no mirror, trying to like clean myself up. And then I hear this guy go, you know what? We're going to let my man finish his set. And I'm like, finish his set? He introduces me back on stage. I'm coming. And I start to do my jokes again. And I'm so inexperienced that I don't even address the fight. Like I'm just doing my jokes. Blood is now starting to pour down my face from the open wound, like Stone Cold Steve Austin in WrestleMania 13 in the I Quit match. And everybody is just staring at me in horror. And I ended up finishing my set, and then I ended up having to do 2 other sets that night. But that is probably the funniest story that ever happened to me, because after that show, the respect that I had from the other comedians was amazing. Like I had paid my dues from that experience. Like everybody after that respected me for handling my business and then finishing my set, which was horrific to finish. And people were just looking at me like how is this guy still performing?
But I suppose if that's the worst thing that's ever happened to you, now anything else you can just handle.
Oh yeah, dude. I've had
You
I've
know,
had a lot. I've had more bad things. I've had just guys that want to kick your ass after the show because you're making fun of them. They're too drunk. Sometimes maybe sometimes you call them out. There's people that they're constantly going to the washroom and talking like, how much blow are you gonna do today, brother? Like, you know what I mean? Like take it easy. And yeah, they want to kick your ass, but it's always like they're always talkers, and usually the doormen handle that, and you can sneak out the back. But yeah, it's definitely happened to me on more than one occasion. But that was the only time somebody nailed a drink into my face.
wow. I mean, how competitive is the industry? I mean, you mentioned a few comedians there, and with us, the general audience, we only see really, unless we go to comedy clubs or we know the scene, we only see like these comedians on Netflix and on TV. But there is so many amazing comedians out there, like yourself and the people that you've named. But how competitive is it in that pool of other funny people?
I mean, it's competitive. It's competitive, but at the end of the day, like I also feel like you're only competing against yourself.
Mm.
Like, yes, it's competitive, but there's things you can't control. Who the industry here wants to push, what opportunities they get, how many festivals they get. But the only thing that you can control is how good you get at your craft and how undeniable you are on stage. I mean, as naive as it sounds, when I first started stand up comedy, I just wanted to make people laugh. All this other stuff was just, it wasn't important to me. I just wanted to be funny. And
Mm.
then it's like, oh, did you do this festival? Did you get this special? Did you do that? And it's like other people put these goals. I didn't have, not that I don't have those goals, but that wasn't the first thing that I cared about. The thing I cared about the most was being very good at my craft. Everything else came and being respected by my peers that I was good at my craft was important to me as well.
I suppose the other point as well is that you're writing your own stuff. So it's not
Yeah.
as if you're not being on screen saying the words that someone else has written. This is coming from your heart and soul. This is that you've nurtured and written. So being on stage is quite a vulnerable, I should imagine, experience that you're literally, taking your stuff, presenting it, and it's that end result of that laugh. I mean, on stage, how much of what you do is written down and how much of it is improvised?
So it's all improvised until it becomes perfect. So I tend not to. I'm not like a setup punch guy. So like no matter whatever I write on paper, by the time I perform it 100 times, it may not even look what I wrote originally because it changes through audience reaction. I find like, oh, this is funnier if I go into this direction. So now I kind of like write personally in point form, or say I have an idea, I have like a direction where it wants to go. That's it. And then I'll stop. And then it's all that on stage, it'll fill up. So that's how I do it, which might not be good for everybody else. But it's improvised, and then once it's perfect, then it's memorized to perfection the way it was executed perfectly from improvisation. Does that make sense?
Yes, but
Yeah.
I'm just listening to that, thinking you must have the focused mind of like a Tibetan monk. Do you know what I mean? Just to have that all in your mind, knowing and not getting distracted and remembering where you're going from A to Z. I mean, how do you remember everything? Do you have something on stage with you as sort of triggers, or is it a case of literally it's like a big story in your head?
It's like a story. So it's like like I have stuff about me, then I have stuff about my wife and my relationship, and I'll tie in all those jokes and stories together about my relationship, and then it's like every comedian wants their closer to be the best joke. So at the time where I made my album, working at Brazzers.com and how I ended my job there was the funniest story I had. So I kept that for the end. Now I've written a new 20 minutes since I recorded the album, and now my funniest story is I recently lost 45 pounds, and I ate my dog's anti-itch medicine that my wife stuffed with cheese, and this is like my big closer. But I like, sorry, I feel like I'm not answering your question well.
It's
It
all right.
like
You are.
no, I feel like the way I tie in my set is based on reaction and based on subject matter, and it makes sense because it all ties in together in one presentation. But then it gets trickier once you start developing new material and you keep headlining. How do I bring in my new jokes into this old set? And it usually goes, for me, it goes, what am I really sick of hearing personally? What makes me want to blow my brains out because I've said this joke so many times that I can't take it anymore. And then I'll take those jokes out, and then I will have the growing pains of trying to make the new set mesh together with my old jokes that I don't hate with my new jokes that I'm bringing in. And sometimes that it's harder. It's harder to do than just it's like a mismatch sometimes, and the audience is like, this is going weird, but I like this guy. Let's keep going.
It keeps them on the ball. It keeps them
Yeah.
listening. I mean, I've got to say for all the viewers is to check out your YouTube channel, because you have got snippets on there, and all I'm going to say is Brazzers and Balloon. That's all I'm going to say. So if people
Yeah.
need to know what that's
Perfect.
about, check out your YouTube channel. But talking about your comedy, as you said, you mentioned your wife and your mom. How do they feel about that being spoken about on stage? Because the stories about your mum are hilarious. I've got to
Thank
say. I mean, what do they feel about that? Do you get permission, or is it a case of, it's always better to ask for forgiveness than permission?
So my mom just doesn't know and doesn't watch, so she doesn't
Perfect.
see it. My mom's like turning 75 this year, so that kind of helps. And she's always like, "Oh, that's good that you make money." Like she doesn't understand like how well I do at comedy. And then my wife is another comedian, so she it's my wife's name is Jen Sacato, and she can say whatever she wants about me, and I can say whatever I want about her. But we're respectful. We want it to be funny. We're not just. It's not just us being mean and complaining about each other on stage. But my wife thinks it's like ridiculous. Like she laughs about the things that I say, or how I express things, or how I embellish things to make them funnier in my act.
Do you carry a sort of a notebook with you, or do you have like notes on your iPhone, sort of like when you're
I
walking through
don't
the day?
know. I have once. So you know what? I'm lying to you. I'll write like if I think of something, I'll write like a quick note in my iPhone, and then I'll build from there. Most of the time, I keep those little point form notes that I was telling you about all in my iPhone. And then if you look at it, they sound insane. Like you're like, I'm just like, I don't even know what I was trying. Sometimes I write something and I'm like, what were you thinking? Like, what is it? What is this? I get back to it. I'm like, I don't know what I was trying to express to myself here.
Do you know what? I normally do that in the middle of the night. I'll be sleeping. I'll think of something. I'll roll over, grab my phone, write it, and then in the morning I'll check my notes, and I'm thinking, what the hell was I dreaming of to
Yeah,
write this? And I was
exactly. Like,
thinking, what the hell?
what is this note to myself? You make no sense.
I know. But I mean, you touched on hecklers earlier on, and again, I can only compare sort of comedians with hecklers here in the UK, because I'm yet to see any comedians. I mean, I'm off to Chicago in a few weeks. I'm
Oh,
being
that's gonna be
flown
fun.
out to Chicago. So if you know of any good places to go for the night, please let me
Absolutely.
know.
I will
Um,
send you. I'm a pizza guy. I don't know if you like yourself a good pizza, but
do you know what?
Chicago is a great place for fucking. Sorry, I'm sorry. I swear for
It's all right. It's
pizza.
fine.
That's
It's
how
fine. You
excited I
can
got.
swear. You can
Threw a
swear.
little
It's fine.
swearing.
Yeah, my bucket list is Chicago pizza. Go to a
Yeah,
speakeasy. Um,
absolutely.
there is a
There's
drink called
there's two styles of Chicago pizza, by the way. One is like the big pie, like Chicago style, but Chicago's other style is impeccable as well, and you should do both. They do a really amazing thin crust, like snap, like cracker type of
like stone
pizza.
baked. Yeah,
Fantastic. I actually prefer it more than the Chicago style, their thin crust style.
yeah. Someone said to me, don't order like a small. Just order an individual size Chicago town pizza, because apparently it's very filling. And
Yeah,
but no,
yeah.
I you know
You're gonna walk at least 5,000 steps after that to walk that off.
to be honest, I'm being flown out to attend the Comic Con out there,
Dude,
at
I'm
Chicago.
so happy for you. I'm first of all, I just want to show you that this is right here on my
Oh,
desk. So I'm a huge comic guy. I've been collecting. I don't know if you've noticed up here what's going on
oh
over there.
wow.
Yeah, yeah. I love comic books, man. I've been collecting uh I believe right now for 20 something years straight. I took a break between 14 and 22 because I was like, oh, comics are for losers. And then I was like, yeah, since I've been 22, I'm 45 now, been collecting straight. So that's like 23 years now.
Oh wow. I mean, I've got a it's like a certificate. It's signed by Kirk Allen, the first person to play Superman, and
That's amazing.
it's signed also by Jerry and Joe. So
You
Joe
so
Schultz
is
and
Superman your number one?
Superman has always been my number one. So the Christopher Reeve Superman.
Yeah,
I've got an original crystal from the movie that's all displayed in boxed frame,
that's amazing, dude.
and I've got Christopher Reeve's autograph. I've got quite a few, but I've interviewed quite a few of the cast of the original film,
That's awesome, dude.
which are still with us. But yeah, Superman for me, I don't know what it is. I think it's because when I was a kid, you know, I got I got bullied a lot. I stuttered, and I was
Right.
as tall as I was wide. So I was every bully's dream. And back then, bullies actually made an effort. They did it in person. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
They actually physically beat you up. But to
yeah.
top it off, it was by girls, not boys. So I was traumatized for life. But yeah, I mean, Superman for me, I just think's awesome. I'm looking forward to the new Superman movie, seeing what they do with it. I'm a bit gutted that Henry Cavill isn't going to be portraying Superman again. Um,
I think he just got had bad luck with that character. He was great. Like I just feel like is this I wasn't too much of a fan of the Snyderverse. Like I remember watching, when they released the Snyder
mm,
the Justice League, which was 3 hours and a half, and I remember just being like, this is this is hard to get through. Personally for me, I know there's people that love it and they'll kill you for saying that you don't like the Snyderverse, but I was just like too much slow motion and not enough. I felt that there wasn't enough investment in the character, in all the
mm.
characters
I mean,
leading up.
that film, I remember the day it got released, I got all my snacks and my drinks and my beers and everything, and I had gone for my first vaccine for COVID. So they
Christ.
told me that you might have an adverse effect. So I sat down, I started to watch the Justice League, and within half an hour, my temperature was over 40. I had tears
Yeah,
rolling down my face, so I couldn't finish it. I had to
I'm
go to bed.
pretty sure it was
Uh,
the movie.
yeah, yeah. Well, no, I mean, I like it. I mean, Superman Returns for me, I thought was very, very good. I've met Brandon Routh quite a few times, and I thought he made a really good Superman. But again, it was very
He
much
made an
Christopher
amazing
Reeve.
Superman.
What's that? Sorry.
I thought he made an amazing Superman as
Mm,
well.
yeah, but he sounded
Yeah.
like Christopher Reeve. But no. But yeah, back onto
Sorry,
comedy.
I got
Back onto
excited
comedy.
about
No.
comics.
Super. I mean, who's your favorite?
I'm Spider Man's my number one. uh, then Batman, and then Superman. Superman also has a special place in my heart. I was a huge Christopher Reeves fan in my youth. Still to this day, if you go to my mother's house and you go into my old room, there's a big wall mural poster of Christopher Reeve just standing with his hands by his
Oh wow.
hips, like yeah, and it's just like it's still there. So my wife always makes fun of me. She's like, "This, how huge is this thing?" I'm like, don't. That's
Yeah,
She's like, "You didn't
don't
ever
go
want to
there.
take it down?" I'm like, never. Just you
But
keep it up there.
But you know what? I knew you was a Superman fan because that was from your Instagram,
Oh, yeah.
which is your General Zod for Prime Minister of Canada.
For Canadian
Um,
Prime Minister, I'd give Neil Neil for change.
which which I've actually met Terence Stamp. He did his first ever Comic Con and he's never done one since. So it obviously didn't go well for him. Uh,
I love
but
Terrence Stamp. Such a great actor.
Mm, very much so. So, I mean, obviously, with hecklers, you've had the ones that throw stuff at you. You've had the ones that go to the toilet to maybe snort something or not. I mean, how do you deal with people shouting out at you? Just random stuff because you see it in clubs, and it must be so distracting.
It's like, there are people unfortunately drink and get drunk and they think a lot of them think they're helping the show, which is the craziest thing. That they'll be like, "Oh man, you were amazing." You talk through the whole show and they're like, "Bro, I thought I was helping." You're like, no, you didn't help. I just wanted to do my jokes missionary style from beginning to end. That's it. But like, um so that's the thing, is every audience is its own personal experience on stage. No matter how prepared you are with your jokes, the audience is the jazz, because they can just take you to different places. And I think the best way to deal with hecklers is to have fun as much as possible. But we're all human beings. Some days you're just angrier than you are on other days, and you might snap on stage, and and become unhinged, and then the audience gets scared of you and you have a shitty set after that. It happens. It happens. But mostly I try to have fun with them. I'll talk to them. And then sometimes what happens is the audience will turn on the heckler and
Mm.
start like, some guy will be like, why don't you shut the fuck up? Like from another table. I'm like, oh, now you got people that are waiting for you outside. I listen, this guy's huge. And you're like, ha, 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 ha. Like as long as you have fun with it and keep it moving, it should be all right. But then, sometimes there are just bad hecklers. And I, I don't ever ask for somebody to be picked out, but most of the best clubs will recognize like this is going on too much. They get their huge doorman is like, all right, sorry, sir, you're out. And they usually get applauded off stage. And I've had an audience sing, like na 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 na, oh, goodbye to the guy, to a couple as they were being escorted out, which is hilarious. But yeah, I think you just have to have fun and don't get mad is the key. But like I said, we're all human, and sometimes you just lose it on stage.
I suppose the key as well is getting the audience behind you as well, because
Right.
once you've done that, then well, everything else is going to rock and roll. I mean, how would you call your comedy? I mean, would you say it's quite risque? Because I mean, how do you sort of? I mean, times have changed. Times have changed from back when Eddie Murphy was on stage and Richard
Right.
Pryor and people like that, and I'm not gonna, should I dare say, wokeness. But
Right.
it's sort of like there is a lot of shows like in the UK, Faulty Towers have been taken off the TV. Faulty
What?
Towers have been taken off the TV because
Really?
because of Manuel, because of the jokes, because it's not
Who is
politically.
Manuel in Faulty Towers again? Sorry. Like I know
Oh,
Faulty Towers, but
I forgot his name. He's quite a famous actor. Oh no.
my jam,
Let-
my favorite UK show was Red Dwarf. I've seen all the seasons. Like I'm a
Oh
huge,
mate.
massive.
Yeah, it's
I
just
love Red Dwarf.
fantastic.
Oh,
Manuel was played by a guy called Andrew Sachs.
right. And was he a gay character on the show?
No, no, he was just a waiter, but he was a Spanish waiter that didn't speak any
Oh,
English, and he always went que like that. And Basil, who was the owner, who was John Cleese,
please, yeah.
used to like sort of just batter him with stuff. Do you know what I mean? Because he couldn't
Yeah.
understand him. So I mean, how do you adapt your comedy now? Just bearing in mind that obviously there is a lot of sensitive people out there that might take offense.
Look, I think people subjectively are always going to be offended, but you can't be perfect. And personally, I don't think I'm an offensive comedian. I may use strong language sometimes, and people not may not like my subject matter. Like I've had people like if I talk about working at Brazzers.com, I've had people like get up just because I'm talking about working there. But I'm like, that's not me. That's you that's uncomfortable, and you're more than welcome to leave. I'm unapologetic about it because, I watch a lot of comedy all the time and I watch my peers, and not all of it is for me. Just some of it that I just not that anything offends me, but I'm just like, I don't even think this is funny. But I just sit there and move on. And I think people need to do that more, and people need to be more unapologetic. I mean, there's you going up there and doing hate speech, which is insane. But if you're being funny and you're talking about like I don't know, like there's a new bit that I do where I make fun of people who are in therapy that won't shut up about their therapy, and no one's asked them, and it kills, and it's killed like in left rooms. But I've had people be offended, be like, well, I'm in therapy. I'm like, I never said therapy was bad. I just said I don't want to fucking hear about it, and it gets a laugh too. So it's like
See,
what
they
what I
see
got what
they
I got
told
what I
you
got to
they
hear
were in
it.
therapy.
Yeah. So it happens, and people don't hear what you're saying. They just hear you making fun of therapy, and they think you're making fun. I'm like, I never said that therapy was bad. I just said I don't want to hear about it
Mm.
from people when I haven't even asked them. So it's like, why can't I say that?
I mean, do you think it's going to make it harder for comics? If we keep going the way that we are, where it's
I
risque
think
to
here,
talk about vegans and talk about
I think we're
race and
coming back in North America. It feels like we're coming back from the left towards the middle again.
mm,
Like there's acts like Shane Gillis, who arguably could be the number one comedian in the United States right now. I mean, you've heard about this guy. Like he was fired from SNL he did like because he was on a podcast and he did like he's a white guy, but he did like a Chinese impression of a restaurant owner, and they like fired
yeah,
him. He's become huge. They had him host the show recently because of how big he became, which is like so hypocritical. It's like you fired this guy from the cast, now he's host, and he went on the show and he did some risque joke. He said the word retard. He said he called himself gay. Like it was like it was something like you hadn't seen on SNL for over 20 years. So I feel like I feel like the loudest people online don't represent most people. I feel like you have people on the right that are loud online and people on the left online, and everybody in the middle is just like, okay, guys, like everybody here's a loser. Like, just get off your computer. Like, but these are the voices that people think are narrating our world when
mm,
I feel like most of us are in the middle. Yeah, sometimes I'm conservative about certain things, and sometimes I'm liberal about other subjects, and I'm open to discuss it and have a disagreement with my friend and not see the same point of view and move on and still be friends. And like now people want to like shame you for not believing what they believe, and you're like, okay, I like personally I don't care. I don't care. I'm
I
unapologetic.
think I think that's the key, is that we shouldn't care, because at
No,
the end of the day, I mean, I think Ricky Gervais said it in an interview that jokes aren't offensive. It's the people that are listening to them that takes offense, and you know I think just comedians should just literally just go for it, and then if people don't like it, well, they've got a choice to turn it off, or they've got a choice to walk out, or they've got a choice to not go and see the show. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, but in the same note, the comedian has a responsibility. If you're trying something, if you've
Mm,
tried it 100 times and you're not getting any laughs anywhere, then
mm,
it's over for you in that subject. You haven't learned how to make it funny. You need to move on. That's the other thing. It's like
yeah.
that's the responsibility of the comedian. If you're not getting laughs and you're trying to be risque, and you then risque comedy is not for you.
Mm. I mean, you couldn't get more risque than Ricky Gervais's Oscar,
The Golden Globes.
the opening speech that he did.
Was it Golden Globes you're talking about?
Was it Golden Globes? About
Yeah,
is it
he was the
about
Golden
Harvard?
Globes guy for like years, where he talks about like all of you being all of Epstein's friends and all this stuff. He's amazing. He's amazing. Like I watch that guy and how much he doesn't give a shit, and it inspires me to like become a better joke writer. It's like he's unbelievable, and also like the fact that he doesn't care and he's so comfortable telling all those people in those room how it is. And they keep wanting him to come back, which is the crazy part. It's like, oh no, and he's like, I will never do this again. I hate all of you. And I'm like, I believe when he says, I hate all of you.
I mean,
But yeah, he's amazing.
he must have balls of steel, because to stand there looking at all these actors that are the biggest actors in the world and just say these things. I just think, I mean, when you talk about writing, though, I mean, do you think that he writes all his own things? Because I'm sure there's comedians out there that don't write their own things.
I think so for doing like anyone knows like that's in this business that knows if you're getting an award show like that, yes, you are writing your own things, but you have a team of trusted writers that are helping you load your gun so that it's like every round is like unbelievable. So there's no waste in any chambers. It's just like he definitely wrote that, but then he had a team of guys that he trusts to help him make all those jokes and sharpening all those jokes for sure.
I mean, do you have any plans on coming over to the UK to do any
I
shows?
I I have not made any plans to go to the UK. My next move is after my album's released. I'm working on getting my O1 visa, and I'm going to be heading to New York City, which is closer. UK is far, and yeah, if I had shows lined up or people lined up, but I don't really. I know a couple of comics that are out there that are originally here from Canada, but I've never thought of. To be honest, I never thought of going because I've always wanted to go to New York, which is in my backyard over here.
Mhm. I mean, New York is one of my favorite places to go. But in the way of humor, I mean, obviously, as Brits, we get like literally quite a lot of humor. So something like that. Do you think you would have to adapt it slightly? Do you know what I mean? Because our sarcasm doesn't come across to like say like the Americans. They don't get our
No, it's
sarcasm at all.
you know what? Going, it's one of those things where it's like I'd have to go, and then I'd have to learn the UK audience by just stand up's the only thing that you learn with the audience. It's the only art that you learn what works and doesn't work, and then you start tweaking things as you perform more and more for that audience. So I'm like, okay, then they hate whenever I do this joke. That's done. I can't do that here. And then I would have to think of, it's the job at the end of the day. It's like, yes, I do my jokes, but I'm also like a responsible comedian that like when I'm getting paid to perform for an audience, my goal is to make that audience laugh and have a great set. So if my act does not work out for me the way it would work out for me here in North America, then it's my job to get better while I'm out there in the
Mm,
UK in order to become undeniable there and also to entertain the audience. That's my ultimate goal, is to have people falling over their seats and enjoying me and having a good time for the duration of my set. So I would, like, if it didn't work out the way it works out here, I would start finessing it and figuring out, and it would keep me awake all night until I figured it out. And I'd go to 4 or 5 different mics a night trying to figure it out. Like, I get
bless you.
obsessive like that.
And what advice would you give anyone that maybe wanted to give, being a stand-up comedian a go? Yeah, from your experience.
If you want to give stand-up comedy to go, write 5 minutes of material. Call up any comedy club that you grew up around and tell them that it's your first time doing comedy and that you'd like it to be at their club, at their open mic, and every comedy club loves that. They love introducing somebody, like, this is this person's first time and they wanted it to be here. They love that because your first time should be at a comedy club with people that went to go to comedy. You
Mm.
don't want it to be at like some bar that you pop up a show. Just for your first time, make sure that you do it at a comedy club, because it'll then go to all these other bar shows and suffer like the rest of us suffer trying to figure out new material. And the other thing I'd tell you is, like, get ready to constantly be addicted to chasing the dragon. You'll have your best set ever, and then you'll be constantly chasing that until you have your better set and better set. And it can be like, stand up can be depressing in some ways, where it's like you build like 10 minutes, 15 minutes of time, and you're killing all the time with these 15 minutes. And then one day you're like, you know what? I hate all my material. I'm a phony. And you'll go into a depression because you won't want to do that material anymore, but people are paying you to do that material, and you go up there and then you'll start bombing with that material because people will feel that you don't want to do this. So it's really important to challenge yourself over and over and create new material and take a beating with new material, because there's nothing worse than getting tired of your old material and you going up on stage not wanting to perform it and giving that type of energy and bombing. You'll be depressed about everything. Keep challenging yourself, keep trying to develop new material, and that way you'll be able to stay fresh on stage and be happy with your own creative process and what you're putting out there constantly.
I mean, would you say it's a bit like being a musician? like a singer. Like you get these artists that will have these hit songs, and then
Right.
literally they'll keep performing them over and over again, and you're waiting for new stuff to come out, and then maybe that new stuff might bomb, and then you're waiting for a revival, and then all of a sudden you see them 30 years later still peddling the old stuff. I mean, do you see like comedians that literally are stuck in their own ways?
I see comedians all the time. They're like, there's guys that were older comedians than me, and they're still doing the same headlining or middle set, this from the beginning to the end, the same riffing with audience members, and it's like you do this every show, and that I feel like that's the difference. It's like at the end, is that who you want to be? Is that who you want to be on stage, or are you taking this craft seriously and you want to push yourself to always get better and better? And the thing is, like, I do believe it's like a musician. The only difference I would say is that as an audience, people always want to hear those songs, and then a comedic audience are like, after a while they hear the same jokes, they get done with you and they want new stuff. So that's different from the audience's perspective.
I mean, do you find that there are comedians out there that maybe not intentionally steal jokes, but how do you sort of prevent other comedians sort of taking your material?
So I believe there's comedians that outright steal jokes. I know about everybody knows comics that will steal your jokes unapologetically, and they have bad reputations. People don't like them. Sometimes they're more successful than the comedians that they've stolen jokes from, which sucks in a lot of ways. And they're sociopaths, really. Like they just don't care. All they care is about fame and stepping over their peers. The way for me is like my stories are so personal that if somebody would say them, it just it's insane. It's like you know, and then there's certain subject matter that I feel it's like, if like somebody's talking about like the way they used to watch porn in the 80s and you have a joke about the way you used to watch porn in the 80s, I'm like, it's that's like free play. It's like you both have the same idea. You might come to the same ending. The joke might be a little different, but at the end of the day, it's like you can both have it. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, it's a Picasso masturbating joke. Like, get out of here. Like,
Yeah,
but
it's general, isn't it? Everyone's experienced that, so I suppose that's
mhm.
not an individual thing. I mean, lastly, before we bid farewell, what are you working on at the moment? What can people look forward to? Seeing
so
you at shows or?
so April 5th, my album Misnationalized is coming out. It's produced by a Canadian record company called Comedy Records, and it'll be featured on all. Thank you. That's so. Do you recognize this box?
Do you know what? It sort of, when I saw it did look familiar. And when you see something, you can't put your finger on it, but I
So
want to
I don't
buy
know if
one.
you're. I know you're a comic book guy. Are you a wrestling fan?
Yes.
So these are the WWE Ultimate Edition boxes from their.
Oh,
I got the box because I love the box, and then I made it for stand up comedy with different heads and Ghost Design, who are amazing graphic designers. This guy Jono, who I used to work with at Brazzers, which is hilarious. He designed this for me. And he did an amazing job. But yeah, that comes out April 5th on all streaming platforms. And then we'll be followed by like a YouTube special. I thought that was going to come out April 5th, but we're just doing the last little tweaks on that. There's some things that I wanted edited, so it might not be ready for the 5th. But there'll definitely be clips up. And the next thing I'm working with um, a friend of mine who's like, she's a screenwriter here and she produces for like CBC, which is like the BBC, but in Canada. And she's helping me develop an idea about my life in Montreal when I was a juvenile delinquent and working as a scriptwriter in porn. And we're kind of trying to make that into like a half hour type of, not sitcom, but like kind of like, you guys ever watch the show Dave?
I know my friend has, and he's been trying to get me to watch it.
It's amazing. You should watch
Yeah.
it. but kind of like that, where it's like about this guy and how he's stuck in his situation and he doesn't know how to get. And in the show, it's not. I don't want to be a comedian. In the show, the character wants to be a legit script writer, but he's just stuck partying in Montreal and doing all this stuff. So I'm kind of getting that in the motion. And then I am working on getting my O1 visa, and I'll be performing more in the US once I get that.
Is it quite difficult then to get that then to perform in the US? Do you have to? How many hoops do you have to go through? Because it's for me, it just sounds crazy. Because like you're next door.
So
Do you know what I mean?
I'll so basically, if an American comic wants to come to Canada to perform, they fill out a form, they pay $80, and they're admitted into the country. If we want to go there, the hoops that we have to jump through are unbelievable. First of all, getting an O1 visa, you have to prove that you're a special alien, which means that in your own country you have news articles and you've been in media and you've been in comedy festivals. Then you got to play a lawyer, and for a green card or O1 visa, it can cost you anywhere from $7,000 all the way up to $15,000. And
Wow.
then that's even before you get approved. This is just for you to get all your paperwork in order, which could be denied. So when and then it's like, so the O1 visa I can get approved for 3 years. They can approve me for 1 year as a trial, and then tell me the next year I'm denied because they don't feel like I was as special as they thought I was a year ago. So and the thing is, like, I love Canada, I love where I'm from, but being so close to the United States, we're a second rate entertainment industry in our own country. We're second rate entertainers in our own country. Even in our own country, I'm guilty of doing this with music and television. I look for an American product first. And it's the same thing that trickles down from music to comedy. And a lot of the best comedians in Canada do not get recognized until they move to the US, get recognized over there. And then Canada's like, oh my God, you know what? They're from here. They're the best comedian ever. And I'm like, we were here the whole time. Why didn't you recognize us then? And they're like, sorry, there's really no industry here. And you're like, okay, perfect.
And what's more ridiculous is that the Americans film a lot of stuff in Canada. So
Oh
in
yeah. Keep it
Vancouver
for them.
and Toronto, but let us not forget Kiefer Sutherland and Michael J. Fox. Big
Bet.
Canadian exports. You know what I mean? So, but
Yeah, Martin Short. There's so many
mm,
amazing Canadian comedians that have left. They've gotten huge over there. It's unbelievable. And now the most recent I would say is my buddy Dave Marhaj, and then there's a female comic that you should. I don't know how she's she's a bit raunchy, but she's hilarious. Her name's Steph Tolov. Amazing.
well, you know what? For all the viewers, I'm going to put Patrick's socials on the video at the bottom for you to follow him, check out the YouTube channel, and everything like that. But Patrick, you've been a great guest. Thank you so much for coming
Well, thank
on the
you so
show.
much.
And maybe in the future, because I'll be coming over to New York in October. So if you have got the visa by then,
Yeah, but we'll definitely have a pizza date. And also, if you ever come to Toronto for the Comic Con here, which is huge. It's called the Fan Expo, but it's
the
the
Fan
Comic
Expo,
Con
yeah.
here. You come, and I will take you to have you for a nice Jamaican dish. We could do a lot. There's many good foods here in Toronto, and I would be more than happy to
It
take you
just
out and
sounds
show
like I
you the.
won't fit in my plane seat
That's
on
all
the way
good,
back.
man.
Do you
Don't
know
worry
what I
about it.
mean?
We'll get you some down.